Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. Joined by Peter, Quinn, and Durst. About to dive into some corners. Durst, it's been a week since I've seen you. How you feeling this fine Tuesday?
Doing fine. Got to play some pickleball today, and I'm still my back's not screaming at me, so I'm feeling pretty good about things.
Cool. And Peter joining us all the way over from Scotland. So, what is driving the news out in the let's say in Europe?
Well, in Scotland, it's been a very happy 24 hours or so because we've just qualified for the World Cup, which you're hosting over in North America. First time I was 1 year old the last time Scotland qualified for a soccer World Cup.
Whoa.
So yes, it's been a day of partying. Look, I was lucky I was on duty on the news kind of this morning. So I was getting to read all about it on the news and share it with all our listeners. It was fantastic. And then I had a nice wee pub quiz in the evening as well, and I won that as well. So it's fantastic. I'm having a wonderful day.
You said a pop quiz?
Pub, as in a bar. Went to the bar. I was on designated driver duties because I knew I was joining you all this evening. But yeah, we managed to win the quiz. Scotland have qualified for the World Cup, and we've got a good group to talk about of cornerbacks this evening. So yeah, life's good.
Yeah, so the players definitely get better as we get deeper into this, let's say, podcast season. The corners we're going to discuss today: Devonta Smith from Notre Dame, DJ McKinney from Colorado, Collin Wright from Stanford, Julian Neal from Arkansas, Trayden Stukes from Arizona, Keith Abney from Arizona State, and Aveion Terrell from Clemson. This is, I believe, the 7th podcast we've done on corners. It might be the 6th. It's either 6th or 7th, and we have one more. So really over the last 7 weeks, Durst, Peter, and Clint's not with us, have gone through about 56 corners. And the first one that we're going to talk about is Devonta Smith from Notre Dame, 5'11", 195. The channels covered Devonta Smith one other time. One draft professor had a really high grade on him. The other draft professor had a less favorable grade on Devonta Smith. Peter, which side of that are you
on? I was going to say I'm on the negative side of that. That seems way too harsh for me. But yeah, I'm not as high on Devonta Smith as I know some others have been. I think that I watched his game against Boston College in particular. That worried me. That when he let wide receivers get across his face without tracking them tightly. He can track runners quite nicely if going north to south, but he can get lost in zone sometimes. He ends up a little bit in no man's land. I think as well his role in the NFL's a little bit unclear. He's not kind of a twitchy or long guy. He's not going to play on the boundary. Definitely a slot player, but he doesn't bring enough physicality as a tackler for me in that situation. I think he's got nice speed and also the lack of ball production over his career so far is a concern. Only 3 pass breakups over his whole career so far. No career picks. Transferred from Alabama. Only 1 year as a kind of full-time contributor there. And I think he's got nice speed, like I said. And when he manages to line someone up, he can make a big hit. But I think in coverage and in the run game, there's deficiencies there that would worry me if I was to think about drafting him. So for me, I've got him as an undrafted free agent option at the moment. How do you have him, Durst?
Yeah, this might be one of our biggest disagreements in like the weeks that we've been here. But I will preface this by saying that he's a guy I covered over the summer, and I didn't go back and watch a lot of his tape at Notre Dame. I'm kind of relying a lot of his Alabama tape from 2024. But basically, He's a fifth-year senior and played his first 4 years in Alabama, but kind of a late breakout. He only got 29 defensive snaps over his first 3 seasons before having his breakout year in 2024, and that got kind of cut short because they had a little bit of an injury in 2024 to Alabama. But I wrote down that he has the footwork, hip fluidity, and quickness to defend inside and outside releases. Slot receivers do have to defend that two-way go. They can't rely on the boundary to become an extra defender for him. Smith has shown the versatility to line up in press man coverage against slot receivers, and you don't necessarily see that a lot. You see that from like Notre Dame, Ohio State, a few other teams, but a lot of times they're playing press on the outside guys and on the slot receivers. Often they're like way off and stuff. So I do like the fact that he can play press man from a slot position there. So I wrote down, pattern matching, and occasionally will retreat into a deep zone. Again, that was a little bit more when he was over at Alabama. He's physical when dealing with screens, and I feel like he won't be a liability against the run. And then when I did watch him, and I didn't watch Boston College, so I watched him against Pittsburgh and Arkansas this year. I thought he looked thicker than he was at Alabama. I thought he looked a little bit more bulked up. I think I have also listed as 5'11", 192, but he actually might be a little bit thicker than that or heavier than that if my eyes are not deceiving me. But now he might be strictly a slot corner. He probably isn't strong enough despite some added weight in terms of holding up as a box safety, and he doesn't really seem to have the skill set to be a boundary corner either. I think I wrote down he only had like 33 career snaps as an outside corner. So you kind of alluded to it, but to kind of expand on it, not only has he only got 3 career pass breakups, but 0 interceptions and 0 forced fumbles. We're going to talk about a guy a little bit later in the show who's like a forced fumble king, but not this guy. But I have him as a 4th-round guy. I definitely see him as a day 3 guy, but I have him above that fringe draftable. And I see some Javon Bullard in his game, the Georgia safety / nickel. And now that I saw him a little bit thicker, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, although more the Florida version, not what he became, where he became like an interesting NFL guy. He kind of has been, he gets cut by one team and signs on another team and gets traded a lot. And, I think he's kind of hard to deal with on the off the field, or on the field and off the field. But I the Florida version of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think he's kind of similar to that.
Okay. So, and that's ironically the last time we covered Devonta Smith, that was the disparity in the grades. Some people see him as not really a draftable prospect, and then some people actually see him as a viable slot corner at the NFL level. So I think Devonta Smith needs to participate in some postseason bowl games and have himself the best winner of his life. I think it's the right way to put it, right? So he's definitely still some things to prove. Okay, next player, DJ McKinney from Colorado. I think he was a summer scouting darling. Like, everybody liked him, and I think a lot of that's cooled off. But Durst, what do you have on DJ McKinney?
Yeah, I think some people might even have like CB1, mainly because everybody's CB1 was injured. So some people are like, okay, who else am I going to put there? But yeah, he caught my eye last year as a redshirt sophomore. He was draft eligible. So when I did my top 10 prospects for Colorado, he was kind of at the bottom of the list with probably a 2026 prospect. But back then it seems like he was a lot of like press man that really caught my attention. So good height, good length, maybe not great weight, but good height and length. Again, he plays, quite a bit of press coverage, but, and I think that's definitely what he's best at. And he got a lot of targets when working opposite Travis Hunter in 2024. Now, this year, maybe not as much. So I watched him a lot last year, and then this year I watched him against Georgia Tech, Iowa State, BYU, TCU. And I have him as sort of like a solid day 2 guy. So to me, round 2, round 3, I think it was Trevor Seckerman that questioned his play strength when he was doing the summer scouting. And I really don't see much of a problem with that. Yeah, if he's going to guard DK Metcalf or somebody like that, yeah, he's not going to be able to match up against those kind of physical receivers. But in terms of just your average, even NFL wide receiver, I think he's got the play strength. I think he's got the fluidity. I think he's got to change the direction. I think he's got the click and close. He's flashed some ball skills here and there, including some interceptions here and there. So I don't think, and maybe getting to a bigger picture here, I don't really see any of these corners now that we've done these and for so many weeks now is being surefire CB1s for an NFL team. I think we're seeing a lot of CB2s and a lot of CB3s, and I think some of these CB2s might end up being able to develop into a CB1 for their teams. But I want to give credit to who that was, but I can't remember who it was. But I think somebody did a study that says that the guys that eventually become CB1s in the NFL, they only stay at that status for about 3 years, and then it's kind of like start falling off the cliff. Now, that's average. Of course, some people, it's only like 1 year. And again, these are the people that actually get to that status, too. We're not talking about people who are just like backups or even lifetime CB2s or CB3s. But guys actually become CB1s, really only stay there about maybe 3 years. So maybe the end of the rookie contract, the beginning of their second year. And of course, there's guys that have been CB1s for like Patrick Peterson. It seemed like he was a CB1 for like 10 years or something like that. But most of the time, it's only about 3 years. So he's kind of probably in that cluster of like, yeah, he might be a CB1 for 2 years or so, but I can't see anything beyond that. But Peter, what do you think of McKinney?
Yeah, I think he's someone who's got kind of really good movement skills. He's got the, as you mentioned, the length. He's got the kind of good height and a nice long speed. I think he's quite good lateral movement skills as well. He can manage to mirror receivers pretty well for the most part. I agree. I don't think that the play strength in itself is too much of a concern at the moment, considering that he does look visually, I think, quite light a lot of the time, certainly compared to some of the bigger receivers you come up against. But I think for me, the only issue is when that's kind of married with the inconsistency in terms of willingness in kind of the tackle situation. I think in his coverage, it can be very physical in press coverage, particularly at the start of the route at the line of scrimmage. I think he enjoys bumping receivers off the route early, and they often struggle to kind of get back on schedule there, and then he can use his length to his advantage to make plays in the ball. I think he is having a slightly poorer year than I would have anticipated. But not to the extent of guys like maybe Damani Jackson or I think who else it was, AJ Harris, who are maybe tanking their draft stock quite a bit with performances this year. I don't think he's having a disastrous year by any stretch, but I think he's kind of gradually moving down the board, as even some of the other guys that we're going to talk about this evening maybe are moving up and kind of making a name for themselves. I think his tackling is inconsistent, 20% missed tackles this year, which he's shown that he's got the strength for it. He has got the technique. I think it is just kind of concentration, consistency issues. 3 missed tackles against Utah in particular, 1 bad one, which went for a touchdown. I think that if he goes to a kind of press man heavy team, I think he'll do pretty well in the NFL. I think he can sometimes struggle a little bit once the smaller shifty receivers get him off balance and they've got some space to kind of develop their routes without him, kind of getting his hands on them the way that he'd want to. But I think this is a guy who's still, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes kind of late day 2, early day 3. He's, I think teams will look at the athletic skills there, look at his pass production when he's had, Travis Hunter there as well, for example, and realise this is a guy who is going to have plenty to offer as an NFL cornerback, even if maybe the concentration issues or the occasional lapses in coverage mean that he's got a ceiling there. But yeah, I think potentially late day 2 for DJ McKinney, I would expect at this point.
Yep. And Durst, I want to build on something that you said. It's okay to be a CB2. It's okay to be a wide receiver 2. It's okay to be a player that makes the 53. And it's okay to be a player that's one of the 22 starters, right? I think so often we think oh, you're drafted in round 1, you need to be an all-pro. And, there's only 44 all-pros on offense, 44 all-pros on defense every year. Right? Like, it's okay to be a starter or a plus starter. So I definitely agree with you on how you flavored the cornerback class. We have a lot of CB2s and we have a few CB3s. And do you watch Joe Marino and Kyle Crabster's?
Back in the days when they were doing their what they call like draft dudes and stuff, but when they were solely draft guys, I used to like listen to their podcast a lot. When they decided to kind of like, oh, we want to expand into like more like, I mean, I like the idea of the team building thing, where but some of the things they, I'm not bash on them. I just enjoyed them more when they were solely draft guys.
Okay, because Joe Marino specifically this year has commented a lot on cornerback is the most often injured position in football, right? So if you're going into a season, you probably want to have 6 corners on your roster, right? Like just going into a season, you're going to want to back up at both boundary spots as well as a backup at your nickel. And I think even like Devonta Smith, he could fill a backup role at slot and a special teams role. And on average, 33 corners get drafted every year. And I actually think that this corner class is likely going to prove to be deep enough that we will exceed the average of 33 by a couple.
Yeah, I do think it's a very deep class. Like I said, I just don't see like those obvious CB1 types. But can I also mention one more thing? Like Peter's bringing up the tackling part and the missed tackling. What I think I noticed is that he really struggles if he's trying to hold off a blocker with like one hand and he's trying to then tackle with one arm. Like he's not that strong that he can make tackles with one arm or whatever. So he really kind of struggles when he's being engaged by a blocker. I feel like a lot of his missed tackles that like some of them are really ugly where there's like just kind of like, oh, let me just kind of stick out an arm almost like you're trying to trip somebody and stuff like that. And he was nowhere near strong enough to bring people out that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's kind of more or less what I saw as well. I think that it's perhaps linked to a lack of. I mean, we mentioned the play strength is mostly there in some regards, but I think for disengaging from blocks at times that can be a struggle, understandably.
Yep. So the next player we're going to talk about is Collin Wright from Stanford. Peter, what did you think of Collin Wright?
So the first thing for me is, kind of what I look at as a baseline for players is an extremely brave and willing tackler, puts his body on his line, on the line for his teammates every single week. And I think that's, as I say, that's a baseline for a player. That's just down to attitude. He's not the most big or physical. He's not a small cornerback by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not as big as some of the guys, Takaro Davis, Ephesians Prysock that we were talking about earlier. But every single time puts his body on the line and throws himself at runners. I think there's sometimes a little issue with wrapping the arms in tackles. That's the only time that I see him struggle in his tackling efforts so far. I think that the only thing for me is just kind of perhaps some speed and movement limitations. He's not horribly slow. I just think that sometimes once a wide receiver kind of gets going downfield, he can maybe struggle with, trying to locate the ball at maybe an awkward time, lets the guy get 3 or 4 steps. And I think that he's got kind of average length, agility, physicality, and as a result, he can get a little bit grabby downfield at times. He had a tough game against Virginia in particular. That was one of the games that I watched, kind of beaten pretty badly for 2 touchdowns. However, I do think that in run defense, kind of several stops every year of his career so far, he plays like a bit of a hunter. His closing speed is a lot better than his long speeds in coverage. He kind of manages to work his way through traffic to the ball pretty well for a guy who's, as I said, he's not the biggest or most physical, but he can just coast by blockers at times and manage to seek out the ball carrier pretty well. And I think that's something that will get him on an NFL roster. I think that's something that will get him drafted. I'm not quite as high on him as perhaps some might be. I think he's a kind of mid to late day 3 guy for me, just because of those coverage limitations. But if a team looks at his play, and again, I think it ties into what we mentioned, he's not going to be someone that you ever want covering an elite wide receiver potentially, but as someone who's going to, if you've got a couple of injuries, you need someone to come in who's going to work hard. You're going to give them a slightly easier ride in coverage perhaps, and instead focus on this guy's going to make his tackles and support in the run game, play his part for his team, even if it's on special teams. I think that he's a guy who teams will look to as a solid and reliable option.
Durs, what did you see with Collin Wright?
So he's the only guy that I didn't put a grade on. Now I did watch him. I just didn't really feel comfortable with the grade, and I was just a little conflicted about him. Now he is an experienced 3-year starter, even though he's going into his redshirt, or he's in his redshirt junior year, and does have a potentially decision to make that he might he could return, but he is a redshirt junior. My hunch is that he either go to the NFL or maybe skip out on the Stanford program, enter transfer portal. But obviously I no inside information on that. He does offer some boundary and slot versatility. I think last year I think he played more slots or more snaps in the slot than this year. So I watched a lot of snaps where he just never really got targeted. So I did not watch the Virginia game that Peter was referencing, and so I may try to check that out, because I definitely don't feel comfortable with him yet. But the one game that I really ended up being impressed by was actually the 2024 tape against TCU, and he matched up a lot against Aveion Williams. Now, so much about Aveion Williams. I mean, he's not the most technically refined receiver, and he doesn't have the best hands. But what he does do is he was really good after the catch. And Collin Wright really helped neutralize that part of things. He had a lot of tackles, just either one-on-one or even one where he's kind of being engaged by a blocker that DJ McKinney would have had no chance on. This is a guy that can bring down some difficult to tackle run after the catch threats. So he's got good size. I think he's got adequate length. I think he's got, I don't think he's an elite athlete, but I think he's good enough at all the, all the measurements it would usually end up, 40-time vertical, horizontals, that type of thing. So I think he's a good athlete, not a great athlete. I think he's a really good tackler. So I'm not too sure where I want to value that, but I do think he's a draftable prospect if he comes out. But I'm not, and I definitely don't have him first round or anything like that. But I'm a little unsure whether or not I want to have him end of the third round or more of a mid, day 3 guy.
Okay. Love it. Okay. Now we're starting to get into some, I'm just going to say heavy artillery. So the next several corners that we're going to cover are going to, if your team gets them, you're going to like them. And they're going to play early, I think. Julian Neal from Arkansas. Didn't hear anything about him during summer scouting, but now everybody is talking about Julian Neal now. Clint's not here. I know Clint loves Julian Neal, but Durst, what do you have on Julian Neal from Arkansas?
So I wasn't aware that everybody's kind of get on board with him. So a tweet that I sent out is, I think that Neal feels like the kind of guy that Daniel Jeremiah is going to put in his first mock draft in January, and everybody's going to be scammering, trying to figure out okay, who's this guy and why is he so high on him, and everybody's going to try to in catch up mode. So maybe everybody's already caught on to him, but he is 6'2", 208, redshirt junior. And I do think, research senior, and he does have the type of traits I think go high sometimes. So he's only a 3-star recruit. He was a Fresno State transfer, 2021 to 2024. So basically I wrote down he has the perfect build for an NFL corner. While he uses his length well at the line of scrimmage, Neal knows when to let go. He's only got 2 pass interferences this year. So again, some guys who jam and have long length that they use at the line of scrimmage, they don't really know when to let go. Igbinosun, for example. But he knows when to let go, and he knows how not to get caught. So able to use his length to punch the ball away, wraps up when making the tackle. And that's an important part. I think he's also another good tackler who really wraps up. He's got a 6% missed tackle rate, which is very low. And he also seems to basically just limit the damage after the catch. He's also got 100% efficiency as a blitzer. Now, this is a super small sample size, but when I say 100% efficiency, he only has 3 pass rush attempts in 2025 and 1 sack and 2 hurries on 3 pass rush attempts. So that's pretty impressive. So he shows the ability to play through the receiver's hands. But my concerns are he's a little bit of a late bloomer who only started 4 games in 4 seasons while at Fresno. So he wasn't like waiting behind guys at Ohio State and Alabama, but he only started 4 games in his first, actually, I guess it would have been 3 seasons. Yeah, I guess it had been 3 seasons. So it's because his 4th season, oh no, it's 4 games in 4 seasons because he got hurt in his breakout season. So he ended up missing all but he basically became a starter last year at Fresno State, and then he ended up getting a season-ending injury after 4 games. So anyway, I think he's better at press man than at off. Route technicians like Notre Dame's Jordan Faison give him trouble. And then I wrote down that Texas A&M got him twice when he was caught behind. He basically got caught in the trash when trying to follow guys across the formation. So one guy was more of a he ran in motion, and I think that was Texas A&M. I think it might have been Concepcion, but he basically Concepcion or whoever it was like went in motion, and then he tried to follow him through all the the linebackers and all the other people, and just really got caught that way. And then another one was against who was that? Oh, I guess I didn't write the other team, but basically another team got him on like a shadow crosser where again he kind of got caught in all the trash and stuff, and so he got kind of like almost like picked off that play. So he's like some guys that kind of reminds me of is Tyreek Stevenson for Miami, who was drafted pretty high. I had number 56. He was actually a guy that Daniel Jeremiah put like his first mock draft, and everybody's like, oh wow, that guy. And then body type wise, because he's a little bit thicker than Stevenson, but body type wise, he reminds me of Quincy Wilson, the former Florida Gator that if I remember, I think it was Detroit that he got drafted to. So anyway, he's definitely given up some receptions on the games that I've seen, but I think he's a traits-based kind of guy that maybe hasn't caught up on his skills yet, simply because he really didn't get a lot of playing time early in his career. Nice. But Peter, what did you think of Neal?
Durst, do you project that to be day 2?
So I actually have him as a fringe top 50 guy, and so again, Tyreek Stevenson was picked 56, and Quincy Wilson was picked 46. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that as being about where he is. So top 50-ish.
And I like that you not only said day 2, but you're saying top 50. So that seems to be where the draft professors that talk about him have him. So yeah. I love it. Peter, what did you see from Julian Neal?
Yeah, a lot of the same. It's just remarkable. I don't really know where it's come from. As we mentioned, I hadn't really factored in too much at Fresno State, despite being there for quite some time. And then suddenly he's looking week in, week out like one of the best kind of college football cornerbacks at Arkansas now. The Arkansas State game this year was excellent. Several good plays. A lot of good plays against Memphis as well, including fourth quarter deep ball pick, I believe, as well. If I remember that correctly. Just try to check that. Yeah, the fourth quarter deep ball pick against Memphis was an excellent play as well. It got some traction online, and I think kind of contributed to a lot of his rise up people's draft boards. I think he uses his size and his hands well at the line of scrimmage when he's in press. He can struggle a little sometimes with finding his spot in zone drops, to my eye so far. But yeah, the kind of prototype of a press man, boundary corner, tracks the ball well deep, and for the most part across the field, I agree. I think he can sometimes struggle through traffic a little, but if it comes to kind of open field, following a receiver on a slant, for example, he's one of the better corners that I've seen so far in that regard. I think as well his tackling's been excellent, as Durst mentioned, 6% missed tackle this year, and yeah, again, if he can keep it up through the rest of the season, I think that he's a guy who's going to keep building, kind of building his draft stock, getting higher and higher. I've got him as day 2, probably pushing in towards round 2 for me. But I absolutely would have no problem with the team taking him in the top 50. And I mean, obviously there are a lot of guys in this cornerback class kind of hovering around the same sort of area, I think, as well. So that's why I think the end of the season is going to make a big difference, and as to where it kind of fills out between the very end of round 1 and the kind of middle to late day of round 3. Sorry.
Okay.
Can I chime in? I made a mistake, and just any kind of listeners, I hate to kind of leave it out there as a mistake, but he did not have a season-ending injury after 4 games. It was another guy we're going to talk about earlier, but he did only start 4 games last year. So he was a little bit of a late bloomer who didn't get a lot of playing time at Fresno State, but he did not have a season-ending injury last year.
I appreciate the correction. Thanks, Sturge. Okay. Treydon Stukes from Arizona, another player. Didn't hear a peep about him during summer scouting. The other cornerback podcast covered him. It came back all roses. But Peter, what did you see with Treydon Stukes from Arizona?
Yeah, I didn't really know very much about Treydon Stukes before this. He was one that I had to go and have a look at, and I enjoyed it. He's a 6-year player, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe Shrine Bowl invitee as well, which it's it was well deserved, judging by the tape that I've seen, and I think that he seems to have even upped his game a bit since then as well. So kind of development throughout the season, which is always a good sign. He's got having a fantastic year. He also had a good 2023. So I was kind of a bit surprised, looking at it now, a bit surprised that he didn't declare then. I think that he's someone who doesn't necessarily have a specific defined position at the moment. He's a bit of a slot or safety hybrid, playing a lot of safety at the moment. However, wherever he lines up, he is, a guy, great instincts, just a good football player and a nice leader as well. You can kind of see he's also very experienced. So I think that shows through. He's very well respected by coaches, teammates. I think that for him playing, in the slot, certainly, and if it's a crowded box, for example, there's some play strength concerns for me, just in terms, he's got excellent motor, excellent effort. But I think sometimes he can struggle a little through traffic, kind of locating the ball, in the same way that I'd mentioned that I think Collin Wright can do that quite nicely. I think that he sometimes struggles to kind of locate the ball carrier in a crowd. He had an excellent kind of deep ball pass breakup against Kansas. I think that sometimes if he was, if he's in man, receivers can sometimes get him turned around a little, but he has the kind of length, the size, and enough speed to be able to recover a lot of the time. I think that he's got a ceiling as a reliable, kind of versatile backup in the NFL. It certainly could have a massive impact for a team on special teams. Like not just the sort of guy who, I know that it's often said about a returner, but even in the kind of coverage on special teams, he's the sort of guy who could change the attitude of a team. If a team's having a bad year in special teams this year, maybe look at him late rounds as somebody that you can add who will kind of change that whole culture for you, which is a massively underrated part of the game, personally, I would say. So yeah, for me, I think I'm not as high as some have been on him as an overall prospect. I think probably day 3 for me, but again, one that I really enjoyed watching, and I think that he's an excellent college player. I think fingers crossed that he can make that step up and really contribute to the next level. But I think just it'll need a team with a certain vision for him to kind of grow into snaps on defense in the NFL.
Okay, Durs, what did you think of Treydon Stukes?
Yeah, so Trey Down, Trey Down Stooks is actually the guy that ended up having a season-ending injury in 2024 after four games. So he was the guy that I got confused with earlier today. So he's an interesting guy. So he's 6'2" and 200 pounds. He's a 6-year senior, and so he's got kind of rare length for a slot corner. Like he's got really more of the build of a boundary corner. And that's what he was like the first couple of years at Arizona. So it seems like he got moved into the slot right around the time that Ephesians Prysock and Takario Davis became good players. So I guess the coach, I can't think of his name now, who's now at Washington, but I guess he just has a type, and he wanted that length on the outside, and then push this guy into the slot corner. So it's interesting because he was a walk-on, and he became a 3-time team captain. You don't see a whole lot of team captains that are 3 times because often they're that good they end up declaring. But I think one of the reasons he didn't declare after last season was because he did have a season-ending ACL injury after 4 games. But so I have him in terms of the positive, rare length, and for primarily slot defender. And you do see someone who can cover, like if you want somebody who can cover the slot fade, this is your man. So he's able to really kind of turn and run with guys downfield. If you think about like Jalen Hyatt for Tennessee and some of the routes that the LSU runs with some of these slot fades, I think he's a great defender for that. Now, why does not have great elite speed? I think he really has got a good motor and hustle to chase down. There's a couple different plays I tweeted out where he chased some runners down from behind. So I think he's a little bit more of a high motor run guy than an elite speed guy. I think he's got good physicality and is a pretty good form tackler. Now I know that Ian Cummings. I listened to the show actually. The way he had him and said he had him in his top 100, and I love Ian's, but I have a hard time buying into that because this is a 6-year senior who's primarily a slot defender, and that's not usually what ends up going in the top 100. I do have some questions about his transition quickness. I think his ability to kind of flip his hips is not. I don't love him guarding like a Josh Downs in the slot type of guy, So I don't think he's got the elite change of directions, agility, and hip fluidity to defend the shiftier slot receivers or NFL. So again, overage, 6-year senior, almost works exclusively in the slot over the last 3 seasons, and he's coming off a torn ACL in 2024. So I have him as a 5th round kind of guy. Now, I also think that there's a possibility that there's a path that he might end up being an NFL safety because of some of the things I said before. It's been a year since he's been the boundary corner, and I'm not so sure he's got the quickness to stay with NFL slot receivers. So I'm going to throw a couple of Buffalo names out there. So if I recall, I think both Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyatt were both former collegiate corners that transitioned to safety. Jim, do you know that or
Micah Hyde definitely was because I followed Hyde when he was in Green Bay, and he was a corner at Green Bay.
Even then, yeah.
At Buffalo, I don't know as much about what Poyer did because I think Poyer was in Cleveland before Buffalo.
I was gonna say neither one of them did you guys draft, so it's kind of like it's going back a ways and stuff. But I can kind of see him having that kind of NFL career. I think he's kind of got that kind of skill set. But I would also say this: Arizona also has an actual safety who's pretty good, Genesis Smith. So if you're looking at him as a corner, that's one thing. But if you're looking at him as a safety, even though I think that could be a good role for him, you're probably picking Genesis Smith over him. So,
yep.
Yeah, I have 5th round pick or fifth round grade on him.
So, and Durst, I do tend to agree with you as well that slot corners in the top 100 will be a tough sell. It's almost as tough of a sell for a running back to be in the top 100 or for even an interior offensive lineman to be in the top 100, right? Like there's just certain roles on the football field that you're just better off with the risk reward taking it day 3. So I can definitely agree with you. I am curious when we do a cornerback big board, where you guys have Stukes on the slot list. Like, is he slot corner 2, slot corner 5, as well as where he is on your overall corner board? So we will stay tuned for that in a couple of weeks. Aveion Terrell from Clemson, 5'11", 180. Durst, where are you on Aveion Terrell right now?
Now, here's a slot corner I would take high, but wait a minute. I thought he's not a slot corner, right? Well, so he is listed at 5'11", 180 or so by the site I looked at. It looks like that's maybe a little bit different than what you had there. But to me, he looks pretty small, significantly smaller than AJ Terrell. Now, he absolutely punches above his weight class, but ever since summer, I've had him as basically a slot corner, and a lot of people are like, well, why? And so now my comp for him is Asante Samuel, who was the 47th pick in the draft. And so again, I think Asante Samuel was primarily played on the boundary. So I would probably let him fail there first, but I do think he's basically he's got like every skill set that you would want in a slot corner for the NFL. Now, size wise, maybe it's not ideal, but again, probably that size fits a little bit better at slot than on the boundary. So strength, I have good footwork and quickness, good play speed, play recognition and instinct, click and close from off coverage, punches above his weight class, and very good in run support. When I say very good in run support, and PFF had him as the 4th among all cornerbacks with a 90.7 run defense grade last season. So I think he's a little bit lower than that this season, but he, really good run defense grades last season. And he's also got 7 career forced fumbles. So we were talking about Devonta Smith has never had a forced fumble in his life or an interception, but Aveion Terrell is he might be the best cornerback I've seen in college at forcing fumbles. So that peanut punch type of skill set there. I'm not so sure if I've ever remembered anybody at the collegiate level doing it better than he has. But he's undersized, and to me, I'm thinking probably 30-inch, maybe slab a 30-inch arms. I do think that draft Twitter may like him a little bit better than actual NFL teams. And and I do wonder if he has the size to hold up against certain body types. And we kind of saw that. So we saw him against not Tredavian Green, but the sophomore for LSU. They've got a tight end that's like 6'7" or so, and there was one snap where Aveion Terrell got matched up with him 1-on-1, and of course, that did not end very well for Clemson. But we also saw him have a little bit of trouble with is it Mike Bell, the Louisville wide receiver? It's definitely Bell, but I'm trying to think of his first.
Chris Bell.
Chris Bell. Yeah. Chris Bell. So Chris Bell's got that AJ, not Johnson. What am I thinking? AJ Brown body type to him and everything like that. And so I do think that Terrell, if he stays at outside corner, is going to struggle with those types of body types. So, and because of that, it gets a little grabby at times. I do have some questions about his long speed. Now, he only had 12 reps in the slot in 2024. That actually has increased to 98 in 2025. So they may be seeing that, hey, we want to give him some reps in the slot because we think that that's probably what the NFL teams are gonna want out of him, or maybe they're just thinking in their system that maybe he'd be a little bit better playing in the slot. So I feel like he's transitioning slowly but surely into more of a slot corner than a boundary corner. But hey, Peter, what do you think of Terrell?
So yeah, first of all, obviously, I do agree that the kind of 5'11", 180, he's a guy whose size profile certainly fits playing in the slot. He played a lot of kind of time as a kind of nickel against Syracuse, and so I actually very rarely for me caught a lot of that game live. And I remember, he was a name that I was very familiar with, and I kind of couldn't believe what I was seeing at times in the first half. It was a bad game overall for them, but I think he was at times just getting obliterated in the run game, kind of blasted right out of plays. It was ended up being a bit of a burn the tape first half for him. I think they kind of shifted him back outside a lot for the second half, and he made several really good plays, a couple of pass breakups that were really nice. And I think that's one thing that I've kind of seen so far, is that when he's been in the slot, even kind of just tight in the box at this point, that's when I've seen pretty much every bad rep so far. So that's what worries me a little about the transition to be a slot receiver at the NFL potentially. So I agree. I think he's somebody that I would let stay outside to begin with. The problem is that, as you mentioned, you're going to have those mismatches. I haven't actually seen the Louisville game, but even just looking at kind of coverage of it and kind of some of the metrics and stats coming away from it, it's cause for concern. So I'm definitely going to have a look at that and kind of see, because I think some of the potential limitations for Terrell got exposed there a little bit. So I think it, however, is, he's had a lot of very good matches recently. Change of direction in his back pedal is about as good as anybody in this class that I've seen so far. Really good mirroring receivers. Times his dive and his contest at the catch point really nicely. Obviously, as mentioned as well, excellent at forcing fumbles, which is fantastic. Great attribute to have and something that teams will value highly. I just wonder, again, with the athletic limitations, if he's a guy who's going to struggle with matchups against bigger receivers, and that's not something that he can do too much about. I think he plays about as physically at the line and at the catch point as he can get away with, and I think that he has nice tackle technique and stuff. But I just worry that it'll maybe mean that he slips out of round one, whereas I think a lot of his technical aspects are round one caliber. I think he's right up there with the kind of best 2-3 corners in this class. But I just worry that the fact that he's struggled so far when he's been in the slot, to my eye so far, and the fact that there's always going to be the possibility of that mismatch on the boundary physically, I just wonder if that means that he slips down to be a kind of closer to kind of top 50 guy rather than a round one prospect.
Well, let me ask you a question, Durst. How would you compare Aveion Terrell to Trent McDuffie?
Mm-hmm. So I think McDuffie, if I remember right, is a little bit thicker, and I would say that their collegiate film probably, if I remember right, looked similar. McDuffie, of course, was taken toward the end, I think, of the first round, and then Kyler Gordon, the beginning of the second round, kind of a same team, same draft class. How would I compare them? So I probably would give McDuffie a little bit of an edge. In terms of grading them. I had to maybe go back and see what kind of round did I have on McDuffie. I think I probably had him about where the NFL took him, if I remember right. But yeah, I kind of see Aveion Terrell. I have a top 40 grade on him. So it's like, well, so I felt like I want to give him a bump over the top 50, but I didn't want to put him in the first round. So again, that 40-ish or so, Santi Samuel is kind of my comp for him, and probably just not quite. I think he's just as physical as Kyler Gordon. I don't think he's his play strength or as big as Kyler Gordon is, or not Kyler Gordon. I mean, Trent McDuffie.
So the reason that I brought up McDuffie is, if you listened to draft advice, that draft cycle, they said, okay, McDuffie should play the slot, right? And that was a stacked corner draft, right? Because that was the draft that I believe 3 corners went in the top 15. That was a Sauce Gardner. And then I'm trying to remember the other 2 that went really high, and then there was McDuffie, there was Kier Elam,
Derek Stingley, and
Petrie. Yeah, so Stingley was in that draft class, and then after Kier Elam, there was Jalen Petrie, which I think went at the top around 2, and then there were a few more corners, but I think in that draft, 7 or 8 corners went in the top 50. But specifically, McDuffie was said, well, he should be a slot, and Kansas City, he's thriving with Kansas City on the boundary, right? Because McDuffie is playing a boundary corner now in the NFL, when the draft scouting report sounded eerily similar to what I heard from you and Peter.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, I think McDuffie started off as a slot at Kansas City, and when the one guy that went to a free agency to Tennessee, then I think he got more bumped
Correct.
outside.
You are correct. Yes, that's exactly right. So I heard you guys say similar things about Terrell that I heard about Trent McDuffie. So that was the reason why I brought the question up.
So let me bring this up. So and both of you guys can chime on this. So we're talking about it's a hard sell sometimes to get a pure nickel in the top 100, but obviously there's examples where it's been done, and of course Devin Witherspoon drafted really high in the first round. But part of me is kind of coming around that why I do think that in terms of draft value, you might be able to get them later. I'm going to say this: in the ideal world, you would want your toughest corner to play inside. More run fits, more, chances of taking on blockers, both offensive linemen, but also maybe, wide receivers and tight ends trying to block. In the ideal world, you probably would want your most cerebral corner to play on the inside because, you basically you're going to have some more confusing route concepts sometimes. And of course, reacting to play action and RPO concepts. You can also, in the ideal world, want the guy that can move in space and tackle in space. Probably a little bit better on the inside because sometimes you're not gonna you're gonna have that guy coming at you with the two-way go, two-way release type of thing. And then finally, you'd want the guy that's a better blitzer to align inside because of the fact that he's more likely to be utilized as a blitzer if he's kind of close to the formation. So there's a lot of skills to the nickel that are just a little different than what you'd want on a boundary corner. And I think that Terrell's got that kind of skill set.
Okay. Peter, did you have anything to chime in on the Trent McDuffie, Aveion Terrell comparison?
Yeah, even just in terms of what Dur said there, I think that's right. I think one thing that often it can be a race to the top a little in terms of the athletic abilities for some guys. If you've got some kind of real freak athletes in the class, then maybe also they're more likely to be out in the boundary for the most part. I would say, and teams are more. Teams will think obviously they can coach a guy to kind of play the slot potentially and hide athletic limitations, whereas on the outside they that it can sometimes be shown up a little more if you're left on an island perhaps. But I do agree. I think that could potentially be changing, especially as teams play kind of a lot of nickel and dime stuff at the moment. Also, being a Seahawks fan, we've kind of really gone pretty heavy on that and loaded it with defensive backs. And even I suppose at the moment, I know you mentioned Devon Witherspoon, but at the moment the starting kind of nickel back for the Seahawks because they're going with a pretty big nickel is McCoy, who they drafted high last season, traded up in the second round to get him. So I wonder if it is something that's perhaps gradually starting to change, if teams are maybe valuing that a little bit more rather than your kind of maybe in direct place of your big thumper downhill linebackers, as teams shift more towards nickel to cope with the more mobile tight ends.
So question on Seahawks fan. So is Witherspoon playing more outside now that Ibn Mori's on the field now? Is that how it's working?
Yeah, for the most part. Kind of, I think Josh Job's kind of taken over from Reek Woolen for the most part as well. Woolen's on and off the field at this stage, but certainly for the most part, you're getting Job and Witherspoon as your starting outside corners. Mori playing as a big nickel.
Oh,
cool. Well, we got one more corner. Keith Abney II from Arizona State. Peter, what do you have on the Arizona State corner?
Yeah, I was looking forward to watching Abney's tape, and it didn't disappoint. I think he's again, I'll start with what I often tend to. For me, is just about the best tackler in the class so far. No missed tackles until the week 12 of the college season. Second year starter. And if he tests well, I think that he could very well be in the first round. Really liked his game against Baylor. I think he was phenomenal against Texas State. He's got good, not necessarily elite long speeds, but he can close like lightning towards the whether it's kind of coming in towards the catch point, looking to make a play, or as a tackler. Sort of guy who looks like he wants quarterbacks to throw at him. He wants to break plays up. He wants to make tackles every single play. Maintains his leverage pretty well for the most part. Uses his hands really nicely at the catch point. I think that he's good in man. He's got good acceleration, deceleration, kind of lateral movement skills, nice agility, control of his body as well, and quite flexible. I think he can play in man and in zone quite nicely. The one drawback potentially, I think that, again, as is the case for a lot of the guys, a real big physical wide receiver can now be a little bit of a mismatch at times. But I think that for the most part, his instincts can get him out of trouble there a lot of the time if he does perhaps lose at the line of scrimmage potentially. But again, I don't even think that he has any real limitations there. For me, I think he's a guy who could sneak his way into the first round, I would imagine. How about you, Durst?
So, Durst, what do you have on Keith Abney?
Yeah, so 5'11", 190 pounds, and of course you can't talk about Keith Abney without bringing up his background. He was a 4-time youth speed skating, national championship as a youth. So I feel like it should always be on his profile somewhere. And he does have very good reactionary quickness, quick feet, fluid hips. I do think he plays mostly or excels better as more of a soft press than a in-your-face kind of guy. So he showed a lot of promise in his film as a true sophomore last year. So he was a lot of big fans over some scouting. So Arizona State was one of the teams that we profiled over the summer that I was a part of, and I was a big fan of Abney, and mainly because of how well he did and the promise he showed in matchups against Ted McMillan, Matthew Golden, and Jaden Higgins. Now this year it seems like he hasn't had those juicy matchups and stuff like that, but going back to the film against some legitimate NFL, all three top 50, of course, NFL draft picks and things like that. I think he showed a lot of promise even as a true sophomore. So to me, he's not the biggest and not the fastest, but when he loses, I think it's mainly because of a lack of length at the catch point. Now again, Ted McMillan's a huge guy, and Jaden Higgins not far behind him. So of course this is part of the film that I'm using to kind of judge his ability to go against NFL receivers. But I would say that if he loses on the NFL level, it's probably just a lack of length at the catch point. Not the biggest, not the strongest, not the fastest. But he does resort to grabbing sometimes. But kind of what corner doesn't? So I do have him as second when I rank all the guys who we're talking about today, behind Terrell slightly. But I have him as a very solid round 2 guy, where Terrell I have as like a top 40 guy.
Got it. I believe, yep, we have finished this week's list. So we have one more group of corners, and next week, Jermod McCoy from Tennessee, Mansoor Delane from LSU, Thaddeus Dixon from North Carolina, Daylen Everette from Georgia, Preston Hodge from Colorado, Jamarcus Nicholson from USC, and Brent Austin from Cal. So why don't we pause? Durst, do you want to let everybody know about all of the content you make and how everybody can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter /X at Durst NFL Draft. Not only am I tweeting some clips of all these corners, but I'm crazy enough that I put out a 2028 NFL Draft big board this last week. Now, of course, this is the 2 true freshmen for the 2025 season, and I've only got like 80 guys that I've put on my list there. So if things like maybe freshman All-American lists, if you want to get ahead and see who might be making those kind of lists as well, come over to the channel over here at Durst NFL Draft.
Peter.
Yeah, so I'm a Seattle Seahawks writer for Huddle UK. That's at Join the Huddle on Twitter, X, whatever it's called these days. You can also see I kind of share all my stuff as well on my own Twitter account at Peter Quinn 1997.
Okay, well, welcome to the Draft Professor. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out our podcast. I would like to plug the Draft Professor's mock draft simulator. So I am the brain behind that simulator. It has functionality that no other simulator does. And the most important thing is that it's interactive. So the mock draft you do as a fan will be the players that team takes in future mock drafts when other users do a mock draft for a different team. So it's essentially fans mock drafting against other fans. I'm on about the 6th different algorithm doing that. So fans have a little bit of control over round 1 and a lot of control over round 7. So rounds 4 through 7, the players you take, you should see almost instantly drafted by that team in future mocks. But rounds 1 through 3, there's a little bit of inertia to make sure that people aren't having punters going round 1, things like that. So it took me a while to tweak it, but we're on iteration 6 in year number 4. Give Peter a follow. Give Durst a follow. We cannot put this content out without them. They are definitely the brains and the stars of the show. So I appreciate both of you guys stopping by. We will not have a Wednesday podcast next week because it is the night before Thanksgiving. So our next corner podcast with McCoy, Delane, Dixon, Everette, Hodge, Nicholson, and Austin will be December 3rd. And then December 10th, Durst, Peter, and Clint will do their cornerback big boards and discuss the cornerback class as a whole. So we've got 7 more corners to evaluate. Looking forward to hearing the breakdowns. Thank you so much for stopping by for the 110 people at the Draft Professor. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on a podcast again in 1 hour.